o'clock. We're going to call the meeting to order. This is the July Public Safety Committee meeting. Madam Clerk, we do roll call.
James Schlichter.
Present.
Ron Buckholz.
Mr. Buckholz is absent.
Ed Peters.
Here.
Dale Schluter.
Yeah.
Chuck Van Etten.
Mr. Van Etten is not present. We do have a quorum. Madam Clerk, are we in compliance with open meetings laws?
The meeting has been noticed to the public and news media as required by section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statute.
Meeting agenda has been posted. Is there any modifications or changes to the agenda? Hearing none, moving on to public comment. Is there anybody present who is not on the agenda or anybody who is online who wishes to address the committee at this time? Mr. Colson, do I have anybody online? No. Moving on to number 6.
Mr. Van Etten just joined.
Chuck, can you hear us?
One moment.
Chuck, can you hear us? Mr. Van Etten?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just checking. All right, we're on number 6 of the agenda. The minutes have been presented for the June meeting. Any comments or questions about it, Mr. Peters?
No. Make a motion.
Motion for Mr. Peters. I have a second for Mr. Schluter. Motion is to approve the minutes as presented. Any comments on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Moving on to number 7, judge is not available. Moving on to item B, courthouse remodel update. Mr. Hoff.
Thank you. We've been meeting with the architect and the construction manager on the layout of the new courtroom and other remodel items related to that. We had a meeting on June 23rd with all the interested parties, that being all the departments involved with the architect and the construction manager. Went over a lot of things in the court-related design of that space, including the holding rooms, soundproofing needs, layout and traffic flow for prisoners and for the public. I think it's really coming together. We made a lot of good progress, I think, between the sheriff's staff and the court staff and all involved. So that's coming together. There's another meeting scheduled for next Wednesday where we'll kind of finalize some of that space, as well as talk more about what happens on this side of this wing, also the boardroom, and potentially the vets building and vet space as well. So there'll be more discussion about that at Public Works next Wednesday as well. We've got the construction manager contract going through Public Works and the board next board meeting. But I think as far as public safety goes, I think things are looking pretty good, unless you've got other comments or questions, and you can address those Wednesday with the crew as well. But I think things are moving along very well.
Any questions for Mr. Hoff? Chuck, do you have any questions regarding the courthouse remodel update from Mr. Hoff?
I do, just real quick, Tom. We had talked about when we were in that last meeting about checking ways to spend the COVID money reimbursement and all the stuff and solar. Is that still something that we're looking into for solar power for the courthouse?
Yes, we did discuss that with the architects. Again, their initial feeling is, unless there's some subsidies, that the payback is pretty far out, but that is something that we requested that they still look into, and we would maybe need to look into what grants are available for government units for the solar. So it's an item that's still on the table, yes.
All right, thank you. That's all I got.
Any other questions for Mr. Schluter?
Is that something that would have to be decided quickly so it becomes incorporated into the construction, or is this something that can be added later?
It is something that's being considered as we go through the design. It may affect, how the roof is designed. There's been some discussion about, a gable roof or a flat roof and some of that. So I don't know how that affects it, but we will have some answers as we go through this process, and then you can make a decision on, if you want to include it or not.
But probably there's no hurry for us to jump into this, or is there?
Well, not necessarily. I think it depends on the financial picture on, if the payback is something reasonable and you want to do it now, we can include it within the project.
Personally, yeah, let's go for it, even if the payback is longer. If we can use COVID funds, we're not gonna have another chance at that. So even if the payback does take longer, it still might be worth some serious consideration.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Hoff? Okay, hearing none, moving on to number 8, Clerk of Courts report. We do have a report. Madam Clerk is present. Does anything you wish to highlight or share or sing?
I'm not sure if everybody's aware, sadly, our family court commissioner passed away this week. Our services are today. It'll be up to Judge Yackel to appoint a new FCC. I'm not sure how quickly he's going to be able to get to that, so she served a lot of years for Sawyer County. She will be missed. We are down to 1 jury trial for July, thankfully, and with that, I have nothing more to add.
Any other questions for Mr. Schuster?
Just real quick, the visitation starts at 11?
11 o'clock today, yes,
And
and the
what time?
service is at 1.
1, thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions for the Clerk of Court? Hearing none, moving on. Number 9, District Attorney. We don't have a report. Attorney's not present. Moving on to number 10, Sheriff's Department. Sheriff, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Just a couple points I want to mention. Today, Wisconsin's hound hunting training starts and runs through August 31st. It's definitely been more of a concern this year than in past years, especially in the southeastern part of Sawyer County. There's some huge blocks of public land. I think in the town of Draper and the town of Winter that attracts, it's a little more conducive to the hound hunters. So there's a lot of congregation of those hunters down there. I have attended some organized meetings that some community members have put on down there, and town of Draper board meetings regarding this issue of concern, and had in-person and email communications following as well. I did additionally reach out to the Wisconsin Bear Hunters Association and have communicated with Bob Welsh. He's one of the leaders with the organization, and they are actively assisting us, communicating with those hunting groups down there, letting them know the additional concerns. Dogs running at large and trespassing. The dog owners trespassing on private property are the 2 big issues of concern. The other issue is I'm very concerned about staffing issues. We had another jailer and dispatcher resign last week. We have another dispatcher and road deputy. The dispatcher is road certified. They are in the final stages of hiring process, one with another county and the other with the DNR. So if they take employment in those agencies, we'll be down 4 people here. Added concerns, patrol, we usually hire off our part-time roster. We are not getting much of anything for qualified, certified applicants. I think there's a couple things there. I think with the civil unrest across the nation has an effect on the interest, as well as I think all employers are really seeking applicants and help. So I know we're not alone in that area. The jail, we're down in numbers there. And with that, we're having to force our full-timers in because we have to meet the DOC staffing requirements. And then with forcing full-timers in, you know, that has an effect on them and obviously they have further interest in resigning because today, in this day and age, time is more important than other things with people. So they only want to work so many hours, and some of them, there has been a lot of demands on them coming in extra to fulfill the voids there. And in dispatcher, in dispatch, not much for applicants there either. And we do have some part-timers, but it's really tough to compete against the private sector there. So they're not interested in leaving. One works at Arcland and one works at LP, and so they're not interested in coming on board. They like what they do dispatching, but it's tough to make that move. So with that, I'll turn it over.
The communication center report, as the sheriff mentioned, we did have another resignation of a full-timer in the dispatch department. So we're down one again after just filling one. So we do have a new part-timer in the training process. He's doing very well, but as the sheriff mentioned, he also has another job, and this is basically part-time for him. So, and we're also in the completion or final stages of completing a background check on another applicant. So hopefully that'll work out for us. We had our final meeting with North Memorial regarding the emergency medical dispatch. We went over the protocols, what our dispatchers have to do, and we actually tested the system so the phones can be transferred to actually North Memorial, and they'll take over any emergency medical type call with any emergency medical dispatch stuff. So that went well, and we figure that'll be up and going by July 21st. So with the nice weather in the summertime, the calls are starting to increase, as you can see by the numbers. So the dispatch is getting busy.
My patrol report is attached based on some of the feedback from committee members. I've added some comparisons down there for how many uniform traffic citations have been issued, written warnings, and non-traffic citations or county ordinance violations that have been written in the past month, the previous couple months, and then a comparison of last year at this time. You see those numbers there. Hinging on what the chief and sheriff said, staffing issues are very much a concern for us on patrol as well. We additionally have 3 individuals that are out on medical, extended medical, and everyone, summertime, their vacation, so their time off is important too. We're doing everything we can to make sure that minimum staffing of 3 on per shift is met and that the needs of the county are met, even if it means that myself has to go out there and patrol every now and then. So we've completed our biannual pursuit driving requirement as well as our firearms instructor, and I do want to thank out to the city of Hayward because of the one extended medical, we lost our EVOC instructor and firearms instructor, and the city of Hayward assistant chief stepped in and filled that role for us, and we were able to meet our law enforcement standards board requirement for the 21 year. So,
Communication specialist report.
Yeah, I think.
I think it's John.
No, John's report.
Oh, okay. Yeah, did he submit one?
I don't believe he did.
Well, there's one
Do we get a
here.
report from John Prep?
Yep, it's on
Okay.
the newest one.
Moving on to the jail report. Lieutenant Johnson.
My report's attached. As you'll see, our average daily population jumped significantly from the previous month. We're up nearly 10 per day more. We're creeping really close to our maximum capacity. Not going to beat a dead horse with staffing, but it's, you know, the lack of qualified applicants and full-timers having to get forced is getting pretty rough on morale. So other than that, if anybody has any questions, let me know.
Any questions regarding jail report?
I have questions for the sheriff in general.
Go ahead, Chuck.
Sheriff, and maybe it's, I just don't know. How many road deputies do you currently run?
16.
All right, and out of the 16, so when you say you're short, how many are you short?
We're not short full-time positions right now or filling full-time positions. It's the part-time. We try to run 2 or 3 part-time deputies to fill for vacation time and sick time. And right now, we are down 2 or 3 part-time. to fill.
Okay. And for the jail, what do you normally run?
Well, we have 14 full-time positions for the jail floor. We're down 3 full-time positions. We're actually interviewing our part-time males for the 2 male positions today. But yeah, we have our statutory minimum. So from 6:30 in the morning until 10:30 at night, we are required by state law to have a minimum of 4 floor staff on. And then overnight, we can have down to 3 floor staff on. So.
Okay. And then for dispatch, same question.
There's seven full-time positions and we try to have 2 or 3 part-time. It's best if the part-timers are not working full-time somewhere else, so they're more available. But the current part-timers we have full-time jobs, so they're limited in when they can help us. So then it's forcing in other full-timers on their days off to fill the void.
Okay. So my next question then is for Tom. With all the COVID money, do I understand that right, that it can go, because this is going to be the law enforcement window of opportunity here, that money can go to frontline workers and whatnot? Is it possible that we can sit with the sheriff and we can come up with a plan, whether that be incentives for either retention, for recruiting, one-time bonuses? Is there something that we can do so we can address this before it gets, because I went through the same thing in my position. I ran 13 people for my 9 counties. I'm now at 22. And that all happened because we had to change the way we're thinking. And so me not knowing, only being on this board for a year, I don't know if, I know we all do the budget stuff. And I know every year we're asking all department heads, including the sheriff, to trim the fat, cut the stuff and so forth. But we also have an obligation to the county, and we have to give the sheriff what he needs to do. So is that something that's possible, Tom?
It is, you know, and the labor shortage, we're feeling that crunch not only in the sheriff's department, but other departments as well, like youth justice. You know, we're down to 1 worker who's retiring this month, and then we've got nobody in youth justice. We've got other problems filling positions and trying to figure out how to fill those. Some of it's wage, some of it's lack of qualified individuals in this area. There's a lot of different factors that go into it. COVID certainly didn't help, and but you know, looking at the possible uses, and that's one of the things on our agenda, is looking at possible uses for those funds. And pay for essential workers is one of the items that we can do. What we'll need to consider then is not getting into a conundrum of using those funds to pay operational costs, you know, because these are one-time funds. So if we start using those funds for a long-term solution, we're going to run out of money, you know, at some point, and then we've got no way to fill that in. So I just caution you as far as the design of how we use those funds, because they are one-time funds. It's a short-lived proposition to use those for operations, but it's certainly one of the things that can be considered, yes.
All right. And so, Sheriff, let me ask you this. Also, what we did as an entity is we started using an outside organization to recruit, and whether that be, you know, Indeed or whatever the headhunter. Do you use anything like that, or typically, how does that work for you, getting the people in to fill the applications?
We have not outsourced that assistance. I've been attending here in recent years the Recruit Academy graduations and targeting good candidates directly myself at the academies. This year, we thought we were set pretty good, but then we had kind of a mass exit, and the 2 part-timers who were excellent candidates filled other positions in our organization. So within a couple weeks, we went from setting good to in trouble. But we target the academies, and we've had pretty good success that way, but we're also competing with all of the other law enforcement agencies in the same boat we are, and the qualified applicants statewide and nationally are just not there.
We do use Indeed. We post every job on Indeed as well, and if there's special organizations, depending on what area we're looking at, they get posted on those sites as well.
And WileyNet, which is a state network that's heavily monitored by law enforcement. So.
And one last question, Mr. Chairman, I hate to take up all this, but just the opportunity to talk to the sheriff directly. So in the past, have y'all sponsored people and put them through? And if the answer is yes, what kind of cost are we looking at to do that? And then do they sign some kind of agreement through legal that they give us X amount of time so we didn't, waste that money training somebody so they can go work somewhere else?
We have not done that, and we don't want to go down that avenue if we don't have to because of the risk factor and expense factor. And if we end up investing in them and they end up leaving and going to another agency, that's lost. If you set something up contractually, I know there's a lot of debate on how much you can really hold their feet to the fire with that.
Okay, thank you. That's all I got.
Any other questions for the committee?
I would just like to make a comment. I would like to thank the sheriff for his time and effort coming down to the Draper Winter area where we are having issues with concerned citizens and landowners in the area about the trespass and bear hunting and things like that. I really appreciate the time he's put in and meeting with the committee that was the ad hoc committee that was formed down in the town of Draper. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we did, we're in a lot of direct communication with the DNR, and they have extra staff here, especially on weekends, and we're going to do our best to have as much extra down there as we can. That's obviously the big area of concern. A little bit up in the Sealy Hills and public land, but it's really heavy down in the Winter Draper area. So we're going to do our best to additionally patrol.
And I noted from last month about the extra funding that came through from, was it the U.S. Forest Service for some patrolling within the forest?
The campground checks and such.
Yes.
Yeah. And we're in there frequently, and we'll do what we can to extend it further. And the one thing I will say, we surely understand the concern that those landowners have, and some of the bear hunters and hound hunters hunting other wild game as well. It's that 3 to 5%, as we all refer to. Some of them have not been very nice to the landowners, and we're concerned with that as well.
Any other questions or comments? All right, moving on to star of the show, animal control report. Sherry,
Ta-da!
welcome back.
Oh, thank you very much. I missed you all terribly. My report's attached. What I did was included this previous report because it was shortened by identification with the current month. Calls are starting to go up. I've noticed the barking dog calls in the last probably week and a half are a lot. So I think if people are staying home or they're going back to work and the dogs are in the house and they're barking and exceeding the property limits, so I've been addressing that quite a bit. I actually got a couple to go on today. There's the LCO is going to have a vaccination clinic. I think they kind of earmarked the second week of September with the state Dr. DeVoe from the USDA from the state. And so as I get more information for that, the county, he does his vaccination clinics within the reservation area. He can't come off the reservation because of some state rule that they've got. So as I find out more information on the location on the reservation, it's open to everybody. It's just the location has to be on the reservation. So that'll be made public as soon as I can get that information and share that with everybody. Revenues are down a little bit because of the absence of the vaccination clinic that we typically hold the first weekend of March. We weren't able to have that this year, so that's why the revenues are reflecting that a little bit for the bottom line right now.
Any questions for Sherry? Thank you for your report.
You're welcome.
Moving on to precision kiosks.
This, Madam Clerk, if I asked for this to be on public safety, the precision kiosk, I apologize. I wanted it on the CDC. Please.
So we're going to just we're going to remand this to CJCC for the August meeting. And moving on to number G, the committee yearly does a tour of the jail facilities to provide an update to familiar themselves with the areas that we have supervision. So if the committee members can check their schedules and let us know if there's a date sometime in August or September, that they would be amenable to a jail tour, or if they're interested in the jail tour or not, we could have that conversation. So, Chair.
Just a suggestion I know in the past, and it's worked out pretty well, is we've hosted the tour before a county board meeting, like at 6, and open it up to all the county board members, and then anybody who's interested can tour, and that's worked pretty good if the committee and the board is interested in that.
I think that's a good thing to do. Look at the August meeting, August 20 full county board meeting, and set that up for a tour. And then get some uniforms, maybe the cover a shift or something. All right, so we'll set that jail tour for August prior to the full county board, that third Thursday in August. Any other questions regarding anything for the Sheriff's Department? Chuck, you got any further questions?
Oh, I always have more questions than I have answers, but I appreciate what you're doing, Sheriff, and I really think we need to work on some solutions for you to give you the tools to continue to do an excellent job.
Thank you.
Moving on to number 11, child support. Madam Director, if we have your report, is there anything you wish to highlight or discuss?
I'd also like to mention it's going to be a great loss of Susan Lee passing. She worked the whole time I've been here. She's been involved and really put the needs of the children of Sawyer County first. We did not hesitate to refer people to her at all when they would call and they'd get on that line of kind of needing legal advice or talk about restraining orders or custody and placement. So those are big shoes to fill.
They are.
Any questions for Ms. Okamoto?
I just have one, and it's probably just because I'm relatively new on this committee, but under the report, within the report, there's a number of percentages, and I'm not clear on percentages of what. Is that percentage change or?
Like, for example, the first one, court orders, that's how many cases we have that there's actually an order. So it's not just sitting out there in limbo. We've gotten the person into court.
Okay.
So of all the cases that we have, 86% have court orders.
Okay, okay, thank you.
That's just the categories.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Thank you for your report. Going on to number 12, coroner's report. Coroner is not present. Going on to number 13, Ms. Sanchez is not present. We do have a report. Is there any questions regarding emergency management? Chuck, any questions regarding emergency management?
I do not, thank you.
We got the 14th Criminal Justice Coordinating Council update. Did you want to address the committee?
I guess I can. I was asked by Scott from Northwest, Workforce.
You have to come up and grab one of the mics so that Chuck can hear you.
Oh, yeah. So I was just told by Scott from the Northwest Workforce Board that I was supposed to speak today on the culinary program that's starting in the jail. So I can just give a quick update on that if you would like. That will be starting
You want to
on,
identify yourself.
my name is Melissa Fisher and I work for Justice Point as their program coordinator. The culinary program will be starting on Tuesday, August 31st in the jail. It's going to be 10 full days of training. When they're done, they're going to be getting, like, inmates will be getting instruction on like preparing food in the kitchen. They'll be getting their Serve Safe certificate. So that handles like food handling. They're going to be taught things like hospitality, how to work as a team and like building career skills. And the hope with that is, one, it'll give inmates something to look forward to, or like something to do while they're finishing up their time, but also that could potentially benefit local restaurants, as we know that there's a big shortage of help at pretty much every restaurant in town right now. So.
Any other questions for Melissa? All right, just to follow up with on that report for CJCC. They're currently operating at triple capacity, which means that they were contracted for 50 clients and their last count was like 120 or 118 or something. So then we're trying to work with the tribe to figure out a way, if there's a way to offset some of the pressure that they're trying to meet, and that it's impacting the diversion component because all of the resources are being directed to pre-sentencing. So they're going to meet again in August, and we'll see what we got going on. They're also working on the TAD grant, which the submission is September, right?
Yes, end of August or September.
And the TAD grant is something alternative drugs, treatment and
diversion.
Treatment and diversion. All right. Any questions regarding the CJCC update? Thank you for coming in.
Yes, thanks.
Moving on to number 15, Mr. Nate.
So unlike the sheriff's department, we're actually doing pretty well on the EMS side for staffing. Currently, we only have one advanced EMT position that just opened up. Rodney Whalen is going to be leaving us. He got his paramedic and he got his dream job of Eau Claire Fire full time. So he'll be leaving here in about a week and a half. So his position is actually internally posted right now. We did get 2 people that are interested in that, but again, our paramedics are full. We have one that'll be starting in August, mid-August, with her training. But otherwise, our staffing is actually doing pretty well. Sorry.
I'm happy for you.
And then last week, we did have a conversation with North. I know Chief Deputy did bring that up, which is actually pretty exciting. That should be starting here the end of July. North Memorial for their EMD, the emergency medical dispatching. That's a huge benefit to the county. And there's a whole criteria that comes with that: altered mental status, possible overdose, seizures. All of those get then forwarded to North Memorial to take on emergency medical dispatching. And then they'll just update Sawyer County and then to update us on, you know, hey, do we need to step it up? Hey, what's going on? You know, maybe it's not as emergent. So that's a big factor. Yesterday here in the this nice room, we spent 3 of us spent all day on our pediatric, learning our new pediatric system, which is called the Hands Heavy system. It's a national system. About 3,000 agencies nationally use it. It's going to be replacing our old pediatric system that we have. So 3 of us went through a training to then train everybody else on it. So that's actually pretty exciting for us. It was a really phenomenal class. We did lumberjack standby or the wood shop standby here this last weekend. The big news for us is Great Divide has guaranteed a transfer truck to Hayward Hospital every day. So historically, we normally get first calls on odd days. And then you just always do even days. That was the way the arrangement was for years. So they're going to trial this with Great Divide. Now, that will affect our interfacility trips coming out of Hayward. I don't know how much that's going to affect. Hayward can shove out like 3-4 patients at a time. So it's just, they have one truck and we can't guarantee anything because we have a lot more significant 911 coverage and we have to keep crews here for 911. So I'm just putting that out there for you guys. Other than that, I do have call volume on there. That is a little bit skewed because of when the reports due. I'll update Lynn on that. I also attached, because of request of last month, we attached the aging report through our billing system. I don't have that currently, but really quite truthfully, we have a meeting with Brian Brosdell, who's the new owner of Expertise Billing, your billing company, next week, Tuesday. And the question that we really want to raise, so we've had this company now since what, 2017, late 2016. When you look at these categories, is the 181 plus category, a lot of that's probably going to be adjusted off. Those are past or timely filings. So when we look at this, and this is the report that Brian has said that he always watches, we really want to look at anything that's under the 181 days. So a lot of the timely filing stuff is from 2017, end of 2016 when we had internal billing. So that's kind of the question that we want to raise for them. I do have budget 2 for us, but I have to hand that out and I'll have Lynn attach that too for everybody if you want to see our current budget where we're at right now. Question?
Any questions for Mr. Dunstan?
So during the run up to 180 days, I assume they're going through their usual procedures. If a person just says, I'm not going to pay, and they wait for 6 months, they're free and clear?
No. So what the billing company should do is they should move that to collections. And there is a collections line on here, outside collections. So what they should do, I believe it's 6, isn't it? 6 invoices, is that what we heard? 4 or 6, I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't think it's as high as 6.
So they send out X amount of, statements. You get your insurance, the insurance pays X amount. If there's anything that you can bill above that or the co-pays, then the statements go out to the patient. And they send out X amount of them. And then after they've sent out so many of them, then it should go over to the collections agency. And then the collections agency will decide what those next steps are. If those steps, can they collect it? Can they not? That's how that process looks. The 181, I don't know. I think some of it came from previous to this billing company. I think the billing company had taken on when we had internal. That was prior to me, but I think that's what some of it is on there. The 2017 stuff, we always had issues with this company prior to our current owner of follow through, which we've talked about before in committees. So the 181, they've never adjusted any of this off. There's been no adjustments at all. It just has sat in the system. And so that's why our current billers that we have currently are going through and then they're making sure, anything that's 120, that'd be about where we would be at. But a lot of these questions are more for them, on the billing side. I only attached this report is because this is what Brian had said in our meeting that he watches pretty closely.
A separate collection agency?
Yes, so we use the state system, the Wisconsin system, and then we also have a secondary one, which I think is RBC collection out of Hibbing. Normally, what should happen is for the process is as long as we have social security numbers and or driver's licenses, they should be able to be registered in the state, right? They're in the state system. Our state would then be able to go through and try to collect on those. If we don't have socials, which we do sometimes get where you can't get them, like for instance, they're unconscious, you know, patients don't like to give out socials. They don't have IDs with them. Then, and if we're unable to obtain it, which we do try to obtain in the billing process, if we're unable to obtain that, then it would go out to an outside company for collections. So most everything should go through the state first. But we can't run two collection agencies at the same time. I know Minnesota can, we can't in Wisconsin. So that'd be your garnishments and
When you say run two at the same time, you mean have,
two agencies at the same time.
that would go after the same person?
Yep. Minnesota, they can do that. Over here in Wisconsin, I know there's been some questions on that too when we talk with our billing agency. Because remember, they're out of Minnesota, so a lot of times they know more on the Minnesota side than Wisconsin, it seems like sometimes. And we clarified that with them. So everything should, if it can be collected through the state system, will go to the state collections agency, which I believe is Oshkosh.
And how is this ambulance situation at the hospital with them having a full-time ambulance there, I guess? How's that going to affect our budget? It can't be good.
So this is, it's new. It's new as of June 11th. So normally we split, and it was set up to be fair. I don't know, that was before me. It was set up that we had odd days, we would get called first. Doesn't mean we guarantee anything. We just get called first. See if we're available at that time. And then Great Divide out in cable would then get called on even days. Great Divide, as we all know, shut down 2 of their stations. They have 4 ambulances sitting in cable right now. Great Divide's call volume previous to shutting down 4 or the 2 stations.
Or they're not going out on calls or shut down.
They're just sitting there. They're fully staffed. And so what they do is they can do interfacility. So they shut down 2 stations. They have 4 trucks sitting in cable. Their average volume is about 391 calls a year, compared to ours is about 1,500, 2,000. So they have 3 crews right now that can do interfacility requests. So what they've done is they've gone to the hospital and they said, hey, we can staff a truck for you, where we can't because we run more 911. Our staffing is mainly all 911. We might be able to get 1 transfer out at a time, but we can't guarantee that. They can guarantee that. So their first call is to Great Divide up here in Hayward. Now that doesn't affect our Ladysmith, Race Lakes, Park Falls, that we do those. The only thing it does affect for those is that we've told them, well, if we're getting less up here, then we can staff for, we can get more for yours. Because like I said, we normally only do 1 at a time with our crew pickup, or we start calling staff. So we're not sure what that effect is. This last, and I just ran this morning. So June, we've had 16 transfers out of Hayward this month. Last year, June was higher for 911 calls too. We were running about 30 at the end of June. Now, with that, our June Rusk County transfers went up to 25 compared to last year at 18. So we're kind of picking more up on their side. But like I said, I don't know. I'm sure it's going to drop revenue, but I don't know how much that looks like as of right now.
Any other questions for Mr. Johnston?
I guess I have a question with regard to the parentheses around some of the numbers, and are those negatives or are those?
From what I understand,
Okay.
I believe that is going to be credit. So they have had to hand out a reimbursement.
Okay.
They've billed too much.
They billed too much, and so
right.
Okay.
I know this report's it's hard. It's hard to understand, hard to read, Because when you start looking through it, you see multiple. Like, for instance, you might see 2 Medicares. And I asked them, I'm like, what is this? And they said, sometimes when people call in or they get certain things, certain billers just add a line, it could be the same exact thing. It's no different.
Okay.
And I told them, I'm like, it would be really nice if this was cleaned up some, because it's confusing to me when I look through it.
Chuck, do you have any questions for Mr. Dunstan?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you for your report. We'll be on number 16, potential uses of ARP funding. I'll turn that over to Mr. Leader. Mr. Hobb.
Oh, Dale, you can handle it if you want to.
Sure, keep it funny, I'll handle it.
We included just, the broad categories that we've talked about before. This is the ARPA funds, the 3.2 million that is allocated to Sawyer County. Recall that each town in the city of Hayward also get a chunk of change for remediation and COVID-related expenditures that they've incurred due to the pandemic. The tribe also gets a large sum of money as well. So there is money out there to do things to help the recovery from COVID. We've talked about a little bit about what we can use those funds for, essential workers. Right now, we've got the interim final rule out there on how we can use these funds. It's, over 100 pages. So this is, a very limited sheet in front of you on what we can use the funds for. There's all kinds of rules and regulations behind that then on what qualifies and what is an eligible expense. So as we look at, broadband infrastructure, it's like, okay, that's a use. And we being the board did approve a couple of broadband projects, which helps out the county to get broadband infrastructure. But as you look at the rules and regulations, it's like, well, that broadband has got to be at a certain speed, and it's got to be in underserved areas, and there's definitions on what those underserved areas are. So even though it's like, well, you can use it for broadband. Yeah, you can use it if this condition is met and this condition is met and blah, blah, blah. Same thing with water and sewer infrastructure. We are looking at, the water main that we're putting in on California Avenue. And, it's like, well, maybe we can use the funds for that, and maybe we can. But the rules behind this say, well, any project that is qualified under the Clean Water Act or the Drinking Water Act qualifies. So then you got to read through the Clean Water Act and the Drinking Water Act to see if this project would fall under that, and then it can be used here. So, getting to like premium pay for essential workers or, support for the public health response. Yeah, we can use funds for those things. We'll just need to make sure that those uses are eligible as we look, deeper into the rules and regulations. So those are things, that can be explored, through the public safety aspect of this. And if you want to explore that or have ideas on what you would want to use those funds for, we can certainly dive deeper into those things. We are expecting the final rules to come out. I forget the date, but I think we're still in the commentary period, which ends any day now. And then they take those comments from around the country, incorporate those into the final rules, and then from there, it shouldn't change too much on what we can use the funds for. So not a big hurry in the sense that we have until 24, the end of 24 to commit the funds, and the end of 26 to use and actually spend the funds. However, some of the urgency, maybe in some of these areas where we've talked about struggling in meeting some of the response that we need to make in certain areas. So I kind of open up the floor. If you've got ideas or want further discussion, we can kind of discuss where you want to go with this.
So before we open up the floor, the purpose of is just to familiarize the committee with the responsibilities that the committee has in terms of what this funding could potentially be used for, but these ideas then would be advanced for full vetting by the full board, right?
Yeah, so we've got this on each agenda for each committee. Like Health and Human Services has different needs and different ideas on, responses. So, any ideas that come through, we'll kind of compile those and sift through. So, and then you'll have an opportunity to weigh, priorities and, uses of funds. We could probably use it all up on broadband if we have enough projects out there. So, you'll see projects in the future that kind of piggyback on the ones that we just approved last month. That kind of establishes a presence for those two companies, and then they, can expand those lines further into the county. So you'll have an opportunity to look at those. The pay for workers, that's an option that you can look at, and that may help. Again, in the short term, it's not a long-term solution. But as you weigh these things against each other, there's also the public perception of, how did you spend your $3.2 million to help the county? Well, we gave it to county workers. There's both sides of the coin here. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying you've got a lot of things to consider as you consider the uses for these funds. And you've got time to do it. It's not urgent, other than, these pockets of urgent problems that we have. So
We'll open up the floor. Chuck, you got anything that you want to address regarding the ARP funding?
Like Tom said, I don't think, we're not under the gun as far as, I got so much stuff being that I really want, I would love to sit with the sheriff or with, whoever the sheriff brings, and just not necessarily a wish list, but I would like to get caught up to speed of all the different things, and just see if we can't, to me, for law enforcement and the other things and entities are just as important, but law enforcement it's a dual thing where you're reactive, but you need to be proactive too. And so with the proactive end of this, even if I was against the broadband thing, just so you know, I'm the only no vote, but I would much rather put this money towards things that would alleviate the sheriff's current budget. And I know that it's just not sustainable. It's a one-time deal. But even as far as equipment, and I don't know these things. And so I don't know what the current situation is, because he does this out of his budget, and it's not our job to even, we're a legislative board. I don't know these things. So I don't know what the current the state of the affairs are as far as equipment. And when he's short deputies, is that equipment just sitting there ready to roll? Can we take, if we got that new individual that's certified, can we put him right into that role? Or is that something that we need to look at, of having a vehicle, having it equipped, it's quite expensive, and have everything ready so he can either get to where he needs to maintain, and then have a buffer of having a little bit extra. So again, we're not in a big hurry, a big rush. And as these rules get finalized, we'll know more. But I would love to be able to just sit down and break bread and figure out where we want to be in the future.
Mr. Slater, the floor is yours. Anything?
Well, one small thing, what's the difference between a frontline worker and an essential worker?
Good question. There are parameters to an essential worker, and the main thing in looking at an essential worker are those that have face-to-face contact with the public. So, those that have more possibility of contracting COVID because of contact with other individuals is considered essential. So, if you're in a truck all day long by yourself, that's maybe not as essential as somebody who is directly dealing with people all the time. So You know, there are some other pieces of language to that, but that's basically the concept.
So somebody doing their shift in a patrol car is not essential?
Well, I didn't say that.
No, no, no,
It's
no,
tricky.
I know you
Yeah.
didn't. I wasn't questioning you.
But, you know, we've got individuals that, well, for instance, like if you are working from home, so we had some people working from home. So if you're working remotely, it doesn't qualify. You can't use those funds for people that are working remotely because they don't have contact with individuals. So, you know, that's kind of the line and where you draw that line. But, you know, there's other aspects to that, and that's, you know, maybe public safety individuals or ambulance people, certainly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And frontline workers are what?
It's kind of the same thing. I mean, those that are dealing with the
So I'm
public.
not the only one who was a little
Yeah,
confused.
it's very difficult to define the essential worker aspect because, you know, if you're saying, you know, let's give extra funds to essential workers. Well, then you've got to draw the line on who's essential and who isn't. And then those that are not viewed as essential, you know, you've got the haves and the have-nots. Not to say that it's not possible. It's tricky, certainly. Yeah. Piggybacking on something that Mr. Van Etten said too, you know, what could we use the funds for? Equipment wise, you know, I think there was some discussion about body scanners or something like that would alleviate, you know, some more of that direct contact with individuals perhaps, and use that money for those one-time things. May be a good purpose of those funds. Those types of things that we wouldn't otherwise afford, but would help law enforcement or the court or, you know, any other department create more social distancing or less contact with individuals. Those kinds of things would qualify potentially.
Peters.
Right now, I don't have any specific questions. Well, I probably have so many specific questions but I haven't read the 125-page bulletin.
Mm-hmm.
So I've spoken with two town clerks who have gotten most of the way through it, and it seems daunting.
Well, and the other aspect too, you mentioned the towns. We can coordinate with towns, you know, to share the load. You know, if there's something that benefits the town and the county, we can coordinate those funds together, or the tribe as well. So, I mean, we're not in it alone.
And yeah, and I think that would be a good place where the county and the towns could interface and accomplish more than either one working on their own. Even though the numbers coming from the townships are going to be a smaller portion than what the county would.
But the towns may also have trouble spending their funds.
Exactly.
And so if there's things that they can't do by themselves, but would qualify under something that we could do as a county and share that cost, that would be beneficial to both.
Well, I would say that, one, we need to really exercise caution because the confusion between essential and frontline worker is actually a source of a morale issue because it's hard to define what the impact of COVID restrictions, shutdowns, all of the different permutations of government direction for civilians and for workers that, you know, if you send somebody home, they're following the instructions of their employer, and then now you're telling them that they're potentially not essential or they're not frontline when they're at home taking care of their kids, taking care of their family, and trying to balance all of these other requirements. So if we have to really exercise extreme caution when we come to that kind of thing because everybody's been impacted by COVID in some manner that can either be monetarily recognized, but no one's going to be made whole. This has been an ordeal for the last, 18 months. The thing that we really ought to exercise caution is the idea of kind of like additional compensation, because how do you recognize one department that has done something at the expense of another department? I mean, the roads department, the health and human services, public safety, we've got sheriff's department, we've got Pat Sanchez, who's a one person team throughout this entire endeavor. And the work that, and I don't want to speak for the deputies, but no one does this for the recognition. They do this because there's a sense of purpose and a sense of contribution. And so money makes it easier, but that's not why they do this. And I'm not trying to say that we should not give some kind of recognition, but we got to be careful when we open up that box, because the flip side of that is there's so much money that's floating out there that no one knows where it's coming from, but it's there, and some people are disincentivized to want to work. So we've got to be careful that we don't contribute to that area too. Peters.
That brings up another point. With regard to this premium pay for essential workers, in one interpretation that I've seen, that was to compensate for past contacts with or contacts that may have jeopardized the health of those workers rather than going forward. Am I incorrect in that?
Yeah, that's the only area that I'm aware of within these funds that can be used retroactively. So there's a date that goes back retroactive, I think, to last year that that premium pay could be used for. That all the other things are proactive in the sense that current events, so current things that can be used for eligible expenses.
So the thing I would say about that, and I understand that argument, but the problem with the flip side of that same argument is, and it's not the county's responsibility, but the county could inadvertently impact that definition of what essential is, because when we shut down government services or we make things remote, life still goes on. And so Walmart stays open, gas stations stay open. And the people who are working there, they're not deemed essential, but try going to Walmart and not getting assistance and trying to find something, or try going to a gas station when there's no staff there. You're going to find out what, you'll have a new definition of what essential is, because then you don't get gas for your car, you don't get food and groceries that you need. And then all of a sudden we're saying, well, we're going to recognize people who are trained to be working in critical areas. But what about the McDonald's drive-thru when you're stuck in it for 3 hours and you try to go into Dairy Queen? You're south down the road. So I mean, I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but we got to really be careful when we talk about premium pay, in that we don't inadvertently create an out of balance. And I don't want to say that and diminish what the sacrifice and efforts are by our trained professionals. But yeah, we just got to be careful when we talk about that. So, Sheriff, do you have anything you wish to add to that?
No.
Chief Deputy?
We agree.
Pinsky?
I agree as well.
Don't agree with you guys. Lieutenant Johnson?
I'm with them.
Any last comments or commentary regarding this? I'm sure this is going to come back up. So this is just like the introduction to this idea. And that as we go forward with the different various committees, we're going to get different viewpoints and perspectives as to what we can do. And so, I mean, this is not the end all. This is probably just the beginning. Any last comments from the committee or any other members who are present? Or anybody online other than Mr. Bennett? All right. Number 16, moving on, number 17, future agenda items. I can keep that ARPA funding on for that one. Any other items that the committee would like to consider for next month's meeting? Hearing none. Moving on, number 18, correspondence reports from conferences, meetings, and other matters for discussion only. Is there any other matter that the committee would like to address at this time? Chuck, do you got anything else?
I do not.
Mr. Slater? Mr. Peters?
No.
With that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.